We are riding two horses at once, and we all know somebody who has been on one horse too long, right? So the two horses, like you said, humility and ego.
Welcome to Design Your Life in Business, the podcast for leaders by BrightMind Consulting Group. We give you the necessary tools to help you become the architect of not just your business, but your life too. I'm your host, Jevon Wooden. Hey, Jess, how are you? It's good to see you.
Super good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, and the audience is going to find out why. They're going to get a little humor, some truth, just how we like to do it here at Design Your Life in Business. So you are perfect for us. All right. We are a no fluff show, so we're going to hop right into it. First question I have for you is, who are you?
That is a great question. I have been asking my therapist for years. Who am I? So who am I going to be today? I am a professional speaker that primarily focuses using humor with diversity or at least challenging related topics. I typically use current events. So when I speak on stage, whatever has happened in the last 24 hours is free game. So it's kind of a improv stand-up routine, except human behavior is pretty predictable. So don't tell anyone. It's pretty standard. I know what I'm going to talk about. And I write books. I just turned in my newest book to the publisher, and I have dogs that you may or may not hear soon.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on the book. That's amazing. And we love dogs here. You know, I have my own dog. He's back here sleeping on the couch. We might hear him too. His name is Hachi. What's yours? What's your dog's names?
I have a Leo, who is really my dog. He's old and will be coming back through the curtain, so that's not a ghost. He's kind of deaf and blind and pees on everything. He's a pug lab. And then I have a Catahoula named Sky, who her nickname is Sassafras. She's holding down the couch. And then Magic is very loud and has lots of anxiety and is a Malinois Shepherd. So if she wasn't on Xanax, we'd be teaching her calculus in French, probably.
I love it. Well, we're going to bring in another animal. We're going to talk about some horses. And by that, I'm talking about two horses, humility and ego.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you use them both to differ from performer, the speaker, and the comedian and the businesswoman and entrepreneur version of yourself?
Yeah, I think regardless of your job, maybe it's my Texas roots, right? But like we are riding two horses at once, and we all know somebody who has been on one horse too long, right? So the two horses, like you said, humility and ego. Humility is always being open to learning new things, listening like you don't know the answer, being curious, generous, vulnerable, authentic with yourself, being present, right? And when you ride that horse for too long, the people who care about you are like, dude, you're awesome. Just launch. Go do the thing. But if you spend too much time on that horse, you're kind of gathering information, not necessarily being passive, but you're not like launching, right? But you're learning and acquiring and developing. The other horse, ego, we all know this person. The person who's been on the ego horse too long, think they don't stink. They don't got nothing to learn. Everything's fine. But there are times where you got to be your own hype crew, right? Like if I'm writing marketing copy for my website, I can't put on my website like, well, I'm contemplating being okay. That's not like a really good sales strategy. I have to be like amazing, but I have to get off that horse and get back on humility and then back and forth, back and forth. The ego horse is your confidence, your competence, and your ability to inspire other people to follow you, which is what makes you a great leader. Then the best leader knows when to ride both of them at the same time or be able to juggle back and forth between the two horses. So two horses at once.
That is hard to do, both literally and philosophically, right? Riding two horses and being able to jump back and forth for a lot of leaders. So what are some of your recommendations for them to do that properly and effectively?
I would say that it's actually less hard than it seems. Like you don't have to think about, usually it's a young woman at a circus or something who's standing on the back of two horses. We don't have to think of that image, but like, for example, I don't have children. You are a new parent, and you are also a business owner, and you are also a married person, and you are also probably a child of somebody. You might also be a sibling of somebody. You're probably a neighbor to somebody. And each one of those things is a very different role. So you have to kind of navigate the two horses in each of those roles. Well, that's like 32 horses, doing math in my head really quick, right? And so overall, it's just how you navigate the two. We forget a lot. A lot of my clients are very good at work and they're terrible at home. Or when we're doing, diversity related skills, we think as soon as we clock out, we don't need to use those. But then that's when I bump into you at the grocery store. So I think the compartmentalization is its own problem. And that being a person, regardless of what role or context you're in, is your first step of really good leadership. And because you have the humility to be a human being who also can use your areas of confidence or competence at the same time, regardless of the context. I just had the image of when you're on an airplane and there's an announcement, is there a doctor on board? Right? So like a really good friend of mine is an RN and there was a medical emergency on the plane. She was on the way to vacation and had multiple beverages. And she was kind of like, I'm kind of in vet tech mode right now. What do you need an RN for? Right? Because she had to choose, like, is she on the clock or off the clock? She wasn't planning on needing her medical experience on that flight, but something happened. And so you have to be able to kind of navigate them all at the same time.
Yeah, bounce between. And I think that you touched on something during that answer, the humanness, the human side of all of that. And that's where a lot of leaders struggle. Sometimes as a leader, you get so focused on the outcome and the goal you have to hit that you forget that there are people behind the work. So when we get into that position where we're like, you know what? Right now, the horse that I'm riding on is getting this damn thing done. Forget about all that other stuff. How do you reel yourself back in and say, okay, let me tap into a little bit of empathy because clearly my people are burned out or, they need some type of support. How do you get there?
I mean, hopefully you could listen to people who are around you throwing up signs and flares and they're like, girl, get a nap. What is going on? I have a friend who is very, very, very busy right now, and I just scheduled a multiple form Zoom intervention because I don't think she's slept in months. And so multiple friends and we have created a schedule because I'm a Virgo and I could make a spreadsheet. And I assigned days of duty for 4 other people. So we have 5 people working each week to check in on our friend to make sure she's going to bed and logging off. And so we are all calling her after dinner like we normally would, but we are all signing off like, okay, well, we should all be going to bed now, don't you think? Why don't you go put on your pajamas? You don't need to go back into your office. Turn that computer off. Let's go to bed. Because we don't think
I need y'all as my friends, man. What the heck? I need that type of friend group.
Hype crew and take care of you crew are really important things in your life. And I would say, like, if we're being really honest, as adults, I don't know that we have many friends as adults. And so it's harder to assume someone's going to take care of you or like someone will tell me when it's too much. I remember before I got sober, I pretty much assumed that somebody would tell me if my drinking was causing a problem. They were telling me I was drunk, so I couldn't hear it, right? So until something big enough happened that I realized that there was a concern or a problem, I kept thinking that I didn't have a drinking problem because I was comparing myself to far more extreme examples. But I also couldn't hear the interventions that were happening until I was able to hear them, right? I think
I've been there.
That's what other people are for.
Yeah, I've been there with you. I remember when I came home from I think it was my last deployment, and I'm like, oh yeah, party, whatever, just having some friends over, doing a kickback, and I would get blasted, because I didn't realize that I was trying to find my answers in the bottom of that bottle. And like people would tell me like, man, you did this yesterday. I'm like, no, I didn't, man. What are you talking about? And then, you know, you hit that point where something crazy happens and you're like, okay, all right, maybe I do have an issue I need to adjust right now. So do you care to share what your point was where you were just like, yeah, I got to stop drinking?
Sure.
We didn't know we were going to get here, but let's do it.
This podcast is about to get real. If you're on a treadmill, you might want to like lower the speed a bit. So I used to work in student affairs as a college administrator, and I did a lot of professional development and volunteer work with one of the professional organizations, and primarily around LGBT advocacy, because this was in the 1900s when everything was illegal. I mean, it's still harmful, but it's technically legal, at least now. And I was emceeing a drag show in drag, mind you. And I had been at board meetings all day, so I hadn't eaten any food. So I didn't want to drink because I knew that would be stupid if I hadn't eaten anything. And I'd been in meetings 12 hours. Look at me being a grown-up, making a mature choice. But because it's a drag show in a bar, I knew that I needed to look like I was drinking. So I had a friend of mine who knew not to get me alcohol drinks, but they looked like alcohol drinks. Does that make sense? So we had it all planned out because I hadn't had time to eat and there was no food in the bar. So I got roofied somehow in my non-alcoholic drinks, and I have no memory of half of the show. I performed a number. I sang a song. Me, I don't know how to sing. I sang a song. I raised $16,000. Great. Do not remember at all. So wow. I am a high functioning drunk. So I got roofied. I am blacked out and yet still emceeing the show. The second the show was over, I passed out in the back of the stage. They had to call an ambulance. I don't remember any of this. I have been told all this. They tried to pump my stomach because they thought I had done drugs. I had not done any drugs. I had no food in my stomach, so they couldn't pump my stomach. My blood alcohol content was sober because I had not had any alcohol. Then they realized that this must have been some kind of like roofie related drug or whatever. I had to interview for a job the next morning. No memory of any of this. Finally, I get back to campus and all of my graduate students that I supervised had taken pictures of the show. And this is the 1900s. So we have cameras that they printed the photos out. So there's paper documents of something I have no memory of when I wasn't drinking. And what I realized was like my whoa, wake up, was that my behavior drinking was so normal that no one in a room full of crisis managers, right? We're all higher education professionals in a room full of crisis managers and very close friends even. No one thought or noticed anything different because they were so used to me drinking that they thought that's what was happening. And that is when I was like, I think I'm going to stop drinking for a moment.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's crazy. First of all, thank you for sharing that. But that is insane that like here you are, a room full of people who are trained for this very moment, right? Mm-hmm. You get roofie. You don't know what the heck is going on. You did everything to be an adult and this happens. And everyone's looking at you like, oh, that's just drinking.
That's Jess. She's fun. Yeah.
That is wow. Man, well, first of all, I'm sorry that happened to you, but it sounds like there was a silver lining where you was like, you know what? I realize how wild I look when I'm drinking and I have no control and I don't like that feeling. So how about I scale it back all the way, right? Have you found it to be tough to, in your sobriety, or is it pretty easy nowadays?
That is also a very intelligent question, and I would have assumed that it would be easy. And when COVID hit, so I'm almost 20 years completely sober, right? And when COVID hit, it was incredible to me how quickly I call them whiskey whispers now. These little whiskey whispers are like, you know what would make this better? Like, it's been 20 years. There they were.
Yeah. Even you, who's been doing this for so long, hit COVID because, those numbers went way up for people who were drinking all throughout the day, every day. So, wow.
Yeah.
So that's good to know that even people who have been sober for so long, it was such a tough time mentally and emotionally that even you were like, you know what? I want to forget this day. Shoot, I want to forget all these days I'm sitting here losing my damn mind because of COVID, right? So, wow.
I mean, if we can go to kind of a different direction that's the same thing, is that it is my go-to coping mechanism. Even as a sober person, I have compensated for that go-to move that I don't think is healthy for me anymore, but it's still there. I just have coped with it so well that I don't even notice it's still there. When COVID happened, normal got stripped away, and then all that was left was, hello, I am your original coping mechanism. Hello, let me reintroduce myself, right? And so I use the same metaphor when I'm talking about people's prejudice or discrimination or things like that, is that our base culture that we were raised with, there's a lot of do-gooder people out there that think that they're not like that anymore, right? They don't believe that anymore. But it's in you. You've just learned skills to work around it, right? So Tim Wise uses a metaphor of writing with a permanent marker on a dry erase board. That's not coming off. But you can use the rest of the space well. But then when something happens, it might erode your ability to work around what's permanent. So he uses an example of his mother's Alzheimer's, I believe it is. And as it was kind of growing or kicking in, even though she was this very liberal, very understanding activist in the civil rights movement, the more developed or further along her Alzheimer's progressed, this vitriol of racism was coming out of her, shocking everyone around her. Wow. And her caretakers were mostly women of color, right? So it's what is happening? That's not who that is, but it's in there. You've just learned how to work around it. You didn't amputate it.
Yeah, let's get to this speaking thing, because that brings up a good point. That point you just brought up was profound. Now, I want people to understand who you are when you mentioned you're a professional speaker, but you're not any professional speaker. You're a certified speaking professional, which is an accreditation held by less than 800 people worldwide. Why did you get that, and how has it helped you?
Let's do part 2 first. It helped me take me more seriously as a business owner. When I have experienced being an entrepreneur, solopreneur, I don't have employees. I got these 3 mutts and that's it. And they don't even have thumbs. And they think every idea is great. So I don't know that their taste is that discerning. But going through...
You got a bunch of yes pups.
Yes pups. Absolutely. They're like, sign me up. Sounds great. I don't have to do anything. Done. Let's do it.
You got a treat for me? All right, we're good.
That's what a credit card's for. Do it anyway. Right. They're not good judges. But going through the process and the regulations for the certification change, every couple of years or so. So I'm generalizing, and don't quote me because the rules may change. But over a 5-year, within a 7-year consecutive period of time, you've had to earn over $250,000. You've had to speak 500 times. There has to be a minimum number of audience members. So it quantifies this I don't know, I got fired again. Let's see if I can do this job. And going through the process really showed me that I am actually running a business, right? That I am making money. I am returning clients, the compounding growth of my business over time. So now I've been doing this for about 20 years. It really gave me some confidence that I'm not just chasing gigs, but I'm actually running an enterprise. Now, I don't know that I got 100% there the day that I got my CSP, but it certainly set me on a trajectory to see myself as a leader, a businesswoman, and then I can have conversations with other business leaders because I'm like them, not just I fell into this job because I kept getting fired, right? So that's part 2. Part 1, I think, is that it legitimizes the regularity or the reps that being a really good professional speaker needs. You need to, somebody fancy, probably some white guy said that you have to do something over 1,000 times in order to be good at it. Well, if you have to tell a story 1,000 times, you're going to be real good at that story at the end of the 1,000 times. Imagine how much better at it you are when you're at 10,000 times, right? And that there are stories now that I have told over 10,000 times that I don't even use anymore because they're outdated or my old stories. So I'm like building new stories. I'm working on the craft. And it's really wonderful to have a community, though it's very small compared to the number of people who call themselves professional speakers. It's really nice to have a community of other people who are kind of at that standard of being able to quantify what it means to run a speaking enterprise in the 21st century. But
awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure most of the audience, if anyone has ever heard of it, was wondering, like curious, like certified speaking professional. I've never heard of that. So thank you for sharing that part. And you mentioned something else in there. You said that you've been fired a few times. So I'm curious, as a speaker, have you ever gone back to some of the places you've been fired to actually advise them or speak for them?
Yes, that is also a good question. And I want people to notice that my answer wasn't about getting gigs or getting paid more. It was about me and internalizing my own leadership as a business owner, right? So to your next question, once I understood myself as a business owner and a leader, it was way less awkward. Still fun and a little revengeful. But everyone who has fired me has hired me, or at least somebody in that department has hired me at more than I got paid when I worked there for salary for a day or two of work. I was persona non grata from one campus for 7 years, and they hired me to come and do a training for them at 11 years. So I, of course, opened with that because that was fun.
I love it. I'm sure that had to feel good, though, to get up there and say, yeah, I was persona non grata for 7 years and here I am, right? You still brought me in.
Thanks. Still not enough parking spaces.
So question for that can really help the audience. What principles have you developed around adult learning, especially in areas that, people may feel discomforted talking about, right? I'll leave it at that, and then I'll have another part to that question.
Well, sure. And I think you and your work have also done a really great job of this, even just by the questions that you're asking, right? Is humility that is needed to be a student, and there's an element of ego to be a teacher. And the only way to be a teacher is to still be a student. I use humor and stories of my own learning, mistakes, failures, suffering, etc., as a rule whenever I speak, so that my audience members don't have to parade around their areas of suffering. Like, I'll do that, and then they can apply it to themselves. I think that laughter is a really great equalizer, but it also allows some breath and energy into the room so that learning can kind of sink in a little deeper, especially if it's around really challenging topics.
Right. Which is I was just going to say, you speak on some really challenging topics such as DEI. So how do you kind of weave in the humor, and how can others weave in some humor to make those taboo topics, something that can be normalized and talked about, so we can get some resolutions for the issues?
Yeah, I mean, humor and engagement have many ways of being implemented, and we kind of forget that. I think there's a level of control that people bring into a speech or their work or a training, and you really need to loosey-goosey that stuff up. The answers are in the room. The learning that is going to happen, it happens outside of the room after you've left. So all you're really doing is kind of stirring the contents of a bowl. Now, because I choose tough conversations or tough topics, no one in the room should leave 100% comfortable, or I have not done my job. That's an agreement that we've had, right? Now, some people think they really like being uncomfortable, and they've gotten comfortable with being uncomfortable. So my job is to figure out where the underbelly still is of a new level of discomfort, because that's a learning edge, right? Like, it's not a masochistic thing. It's that there's more reflection and learning to be doing and to be done. And so I think as a facilitator, as a mediator, as a trainer, as a speaker, as a coach, as a consultant, it really goes back to two horses. Right? I'm bringing in my expertise and I am wide open to whatever is about to happen in the exact same moment.
I love that. And as we said, my guy right on cue wants to say, yes, that is great, Jess. I love how you worded that. That was beautiful. So,
that dog's got access to a credit card too. He don't care.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Too much. So that brings me to my next question is, how do you get people to work with you knowing that you're going to bring up those tough questions that they've probably been, quite frankly, avoiding?
I think step one, and this is probably an unexpected answer for a lot of leaders listening, is be absolutely positively okay with losing the wrong people. People work way too hard to try to get the wrong people to work with them. They don't want to work with you, boo. Absolutely. Do each other a favor. Go give them recommendations to other people. You don't need to do that. That's taken a long time to get comfortable with that. I'm a people pleaser. I think everybody could benefit from my work and I want to have everybody like me. But the wrong people make it very obvious very early that they are the wrong people. All right, great. So even though it's a very competitive market, I like the term cooperation. So I purposely get to know as many other DEI people as possible. We all have different strengths. We all have different weaknesses. We have different styles. We live in different places. We're available different times. I don't come from a scarcity mindset. So there's more work than I would ever be able to do by myself. I'm only one person. I can only be in one city at a time, even if we're doing virtual stuff, right? Like I can only Zoom maybe 8 times a day before I become homicidal. So there's a limitation to what I am capable of doing, and I need to do what I need to do with the right people. That alone has really helped really clarify who are the right people for me to work with. And that becomes really apparent. I just let them shuff off and go to somebody else. And then the people who are the right people, the things that would be sticky, edgy, static making, discomforts, they're gone already. The people that are left are no, that's what we're looking for. We're tired of the simple, basic stuff. We need to actually really be self-reflective, pay attention to our own sense of responsibility, because we're causing real harm in the world. Those are my people.
No, that was beautifully stated. And I always tell people, including my clients, when you're trying to work with the wrong person, that's the people where you get that term sell, right? The right people, they're going to be yeah, okay, talk to me, sign me up, right? But those wrong people, they're going to be sell me on this. What would you do? What would you say? It's going to be more friction than you care to work with. So I'm glad you brought that up. Because I've been there, I've done that, and those wrong people burn you out.
Yeah.
So where you can't even serve the right people properly anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a similar pattern with people who have no budget or a low budget. Generally speaking, I find that they are the most micromanaging and they're going to work you the hardest. Yes. People who have a really, 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 really big budget, they are not micromanaging you, generally speaking. I mean, they might have to run stuff by lawyers, but once it's past that and you're in, they don't care. It's good. Right. Have a Dr. Pepper, sit back, do your job, because there's more trust in that space. So then you get to decide as a business owner, what I will often do something pro bono before I will do something low fee, because I want them to realize I'm gifting them something. I don't owe them anything for that low of a fee.
Gotcha. And then when you do that, do you still write it up as if you were going to charge them and then just say, hey, this is the discount, or do you just say, I don't need to sign any paperwork? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it honestly depends. I'm pretty anal retentive, so I am very aware of who I have not done a contract with. I am fairly reliable, so I know I'm going to show up, right? And I am very low maintenance, so I don't really need much things from them. But I find that a lot of, I just did a pro bono thing at the end of January, and it turned out I had jury duty, and jury duty was going over into the next week, and there was a possibility that I wasn't going to be available. Well, that teaches the client why they should be using a contract, right? So I brought it up in conversation and they're like, oh, no, we don't have to do that. And I was like, you should probably be doing this, but they didn't want to. I made a contract with myself and I put it in my records and I made note that they didn't want to do a contract. I write that into the signature place when it's blank. We had this conversation. They don't do contracts. This is a contract with myself. So my records are clean and I have notes from those calls. But generally speaking, if they do contracts and I do a limited number of pro bono things every month, it's really important to me to speak every week. And so if I don't have something that week, I am glad to do something pro bono because then I get to speak every week. If they do a contract, I will put in what my typical fee is and then cross a line out and say that this is pro bono because I want them to know what the monetary value is that they're getting.
Yeah, that's how I typically do it as well. As I put what the contract would have been worth, and then that way they know that, hey, it may say that I'm giving this pro bono, but this is worth a lot to me. Yeah. So I'm sure so they don't.
Well, I had someone tell me really early on that when they won a prize or an upgrade or something, they were at a casino in a fancy schmancy hotel, and they got an upgrade to a room for $50 a night. And they're like, oh, this is great. So then they go to the room and they were like, I wouldn't pay $50 a night for this room. Like, how much you selling this room for? There was an upgrade, air quotes, that only cost me $50. This room is a dump. What's going on? So they didn't know what the value is, right? There should be something on the back of the door that says the typical average rate of that room. Most people don't know that because they don't read it. It's also the emergency exit information, read all signs. But that's how they found out that room was $1,000 a night that they got for $50. So they saved $950 by staying in a room they did not like. But now you have the information. So like if I paid $100, would I get a room I do like? Or are you going to stay in a room you don't like because you saved $950? Now you're making an educated choice.
That makes perfect sense. And I like that analogy, the room. That's because a lot of people do that. They're like, oh, this sucks. And then when they look at it, they're like, oh, maybe it's not so bad.
I saved $950 to stay in this business.
Right, I saved $950. All right, one more question before we go to our by design segment. Do you think that there are a lot of companies as ethical positioning becomes more common and expected by consumers that they just pay in lip service to social justice, right? Or are they really putting some substance behind it? What are your thoughts on that?
Unpopular opinion. I think it is trendy to say you're doing something. And I think it is being politicized as some kind of dog whistle to not do anything. So like Utah just became the 18th state to say that no public funded business, primarily a college campus, can have a DEI office. Well, they still have the offices. They just changed the name. Right. So like this is a politicalization kind of like poker chip that's being passed around, and the good guys are doing the work and the bad guys are not doing the work unless you're on the other team. And then the good guys are doing the work and the bad guys are not doing the work. Right. Like, I mean, it's all just politics. So the root of your question is nobody is doing it well. I get asked all the time for a client that they could use as a role model. And I'm like, get a mirror. Because if no one's doing it well, that means you get to go first. And if you cared about social justice, you wouldn't mind the pressure of going first.
Absolutely. Hey, somebody has to do it, right? Here's to the crazy ones, as my man Steve Jobs says. Somebody has to do it, right, for it to get changed.
Right. So, if it's the right thing to do, you don't mind doing the right thing. If you're doing it because someone else did it well and you feel left out and have some FOMO, that is not the reason to be doing the work. And which is why most diversity initiatives fail.
100%. Well, I couldn't have said it better. And that opinion that's unpopular, I share the same sentiment. So
yeah, well, that's what the new book is about, for the record, is learning from other people's failures, because at least they did something.
Yes, so it's lessons learned, and that's why we can't be afraid to fail, because you fell forward when you learn lessons from it. So we're going to shift to our by design segment, where I ask every guest the same 3 questions. You ready? Oh yeah, I see the bounce. I know you're ready. Love it. So first question is, what has been the hardest part about designing a life and business you don't need a vacation?
the hardest part about designing a life and business you don't need a vacation from. I get self-designed vacation days all the time. So instead of having like PTO I have to use or 1 week of vacation, I got chill days, right? Because my plane got canceled. Fantastic. This place has a great outlet mall. I build in layovers at DFW because there's barbecue in the airport, right? Like I have sprinkled my personal life through all of my travel agents' notes. So I build in visiting friends and family and going to favorite places and eating favorite food constantly year round.
That's what I'm talking about. See, now that's designing life and business you don't need a vacation from right there. I love it. Speaker style, traveler style. All right. Second question is, what is the best lesson you've learned along your journey?
Best lesson I've learned along my journey. I still am learning. Like, I'm not afraid of the fact that there's more stuff that I don't even know I don't know. That has helped me really root everything I do in curiosity. And maybe it's an ego humility horse thing, but I'm way more comfortable in curiosity than the pressure it is to feel like an expert or a thought leader. I often say that speakers speak on the topic they have the most questions about, not that they know about. I know about my topic because I'm looking for answers, but I haven't found those answers. But I am glad to share the journey along the way of all the questions I've asked with other people.
I mean, if you think about it, that's really the true definition of an expert to me, because if you think about all the academics and great minds, they only knew that because they kept searching for answers, right? That's what makes you great at what you do, right?
Curiosity.
Curiosity. And I think that Amazon, Jeff Bezos, that was one of their tenets is stay curious, right? Be curious because of that fact. Last question is, what are 3 tools or tips that you would recommend? Could be in life, could be in business, could be technical, or it could be just some words of advice.
Of all the podcasts I've ever done, I've never been asked that question. One, it's kind of an obvious question, but it's so open that I really get to go anywhere I want. Good job.
Yes, you can. Thank you.
Number 1, I would say I have a personal rule that I would encourage other people to do something similar. And when I learn about a retreat, a camp, program, a new thingamajigger, I give myself 6 months to do it. I have made an exception in that I will not bungee jump and I will not skydive. So then whatever comes up for me, if I'm like, I don't know if I want to do it, then do I want to bungee jump or skydive is a great way of being like, I will go to an isolation tank where you like float in salt water in the dark. You know what
I've done one. I've done one before.
Yeah, I did not enjoy it, but
I didn't enjoy it either. I didn't enjoy it.
No, I
actually feel like I tensed up more than I should have.
Yeah, too much anxiety that I was like, did they think about safety first? Am I electrocuting myself? Yeah, did not enjoy it, but I did it. So keeping yourself uncomfortable, especially when I'm trying to make my audiences uncomfortable, is a really important tip, right? And I'm also a believer that like the stranger on the airport who recommends a book, you're supposed to read that book. Like there is a reason that book got recommended to you. So I try to listen for those things. I don't know if that's 1 or 2. Tip 1 and tip A. How's that?
There you go.
Like a little bit of stoicism is very helpful. When I think about like sending in a manuscript to a publisher, I wrote a book that there is a possibility will sell 0 copies and have 0 readers. And I'm proud of it. Great. Write that book. Right? So nothing matters. And number 3, I would say phone a friend. And that I think there is a lot of pressure in consumerism and capitalism and white supremacy and Christianity, which is probably a different podcast, to do everything on your own. And if I'm feeling obligated to do everything on my own, then I need to ask for help. That ain't going to happen because I hate asking for help. So then, because I'm a people pleaser, if I call someone and see if they need help, I'm actually masking an opportunity for me to ask for help in a conversation by making a connection. It's kind of a Buddhist philosophy that like, if you're feeling lonely, go make someone feel connected. If you're feeling unhappy, go make somebody feel happy. And in this business, as a solopreneur, by virtue of being by yourself, you have to have other people.
Yes, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree, because if you do not, you might go a little insane and not know that you went insane because you don't have anyone else to tell you that you're going insane. So I wholeheartedly agree. Jess, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for bringing those horses. We appreciate it. You brought the energy. How can the people connect with you?
You can go to jesspettitt.com, except no one can spell it because there's 4 of the same letter in 7 letters. So you can go to goodenoughnow.com, which redirects, so you don't even have to spell my last name. It's also the title of my book, Good Enough Now, because doing the best you can with what you got some of the time is better than nothing never.
Love it. Love it. Now I got to get a copy of that book, Good Enough Now. So go to goodenoughnow.com right now. Do not wait. And go get you some Good Enough Now, because Jess is awesome. What else do you need? What other reasons? Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Jess, for stopping through Design Your Life and Business. Say that again.
Takes one to know one. Being awesome.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You are. Thank you. Well, thank you, listeners. And remember to keep ascending and stay curious. Design Your Life in Business, the podcast for leaders, is brought to you by BrightMind Consulting Group. To find out more about BrightMind Consulting Group and how you can become the best leader possible, visit brightmindconsultinggroup.com. Make sure you search for Design Your Life in Business on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at BrightMind Consulting Group, we cannot thank you enough for listening.